In late 2025, a quiet question began circulating in diplomatic circles, not in the high-decibel environment of press conferences or the rehearsed lines of official statements, but in the hushed, closed-door conversations between envoys, analysts, and regional power brokers. The question was simple, yet its implications were seismic. Could India be the next major power to recognize Somaliland? There was no formal announcement from the South Bloc in New Delhi. No leaked document suggested a policy shift. There wasn't even a formal denial that carried any real weight. There was only silence. But in the theater of global geopolitics, silence is rarely an absence of activity. It is often a deliberate, calculated posture. Sometimes, in the world of high-stakes diplomacy, silence is the clearest signal of all. Why Somaliland suddenly matters again. For more than 3 decades, Somaliland has existed in a state of political limbo, a ghost state that is invisible on official maps, but remarkably functional on the ground. Unlike many recognized nations, it governs itself with surprising efficiency. It holds regular multi-party elections, maintains its own disciplined security forces, prints its own currency, and fiercely guards its borders. Yet on the world stage, it remained officially invisible, a casualty of a global commitment to the territorial integrity of a fractured Somalia. That status quo shattered in late 2025. When Israel formally recognized Somaliland, it broke a global taboo that had held firm since 1991. This wasn't just a win for Hargeisa, it was a disruption of the international consensus. The recognition turned Somaliland from a frozen issue into a live strategic asset. Once that seal was broken, other powers, those who had been watching from the sidelines for decades, had no choice but to reassess. They had to ask if the cost of silence now outweighed the benefit of engagement, including India. India's official line, and the strategic subtext. On paper, India's position remains anchored in tradition. New Delhi officially supports Somalia's territorial integrity and consistently dismisses speculation regarding Somaliland as premature. This is the safe posture, consistent with India's long-standing diplomatic caution regarding separatist movements. But Indian foreign policy is rarely defined by its press releases. It is defined by patience and parallel tracks. Under the leadership of a more assertive Ministry of External Affairs, India has moved toward a realpolitik approach. It studies outcomes before committing to positions. It allows other nations, like Israel or the UAE, to take the initial reputational risk. India enters the room later, when the dust has settled and the terrain is clearer. The important question isn't what India is saying publicly. It's why Indian think tanks and strategic planners are suddenly treating Somaliland as a serious variable. India doesn't observe regions casually. It observes them when its long-term energy, security, and trade interests are directly on the line. To understand this interest, one must look at the map. Somaliland sits on the precipice of the Gulf of Aden, overlooking the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is one of the world's most critical maritime choke points, the Gate of Grief, through which nearly 10% of global trade and massive volumes of energy transit daily. For India, this route is an economic jugular vein. It carries energy imports from the Middle East and facilitates the growing India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, ambitions. Disruption here, whether from piracy, Houthi militancy, or rival state actors, is not a theoretical problem. It is a direct hit to India's GDP. The neighborhood is getting crowded. China has established a permanent naval base in Djibouti. Turkey is deepening its military footprint in Mogadishu. The UAE is building logistics empires in the region. Israel has now secured a political foothold. India, by comparison, lacks a permanent, fixed strategic anchor in this specific corridor. Somaliland offers something rare, strategic depth without the baggage of a colonial past. It offers a potential foothold in a theater where India's auspicious sea, the Indian Ocean, meets the volatile Mediterranean Red Sea axis. Then there is the Berbera port. Managed by DP World and significantly modernized, Berbera is no longer a sleepy outpost. It is a world-class deep-water port with a direct high-capacity road link to the Ethiopian border. This is the linchpin of the strategy. Ethiopia is Africa's second most populous nation and a rising economic titan. For India, Ethiopia is a premier investment destination. Indian companies have billions of dollars committed to Ethiopian textiles, agriculture, and manufacturing. But Ethiopia is landlocked. Its dependence on Djibouti is a strategic vulnerability. Somaliland provides Ethiopia with a second lung. By aligning with Somaliland, India doesn't just gain a port, it gains a direct line into the heart of the African continent's future growth. Recognition, or even heightened engagement, transforms India from a mere trading partner into a security guarantor for the region's most important inland market. It institutionalizes influence in a way that simple trade agreements never can. If the logic is so compelling, why hasn't New Delhi made the move? Because in diplomacy, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Recognizing Somaliland would immediately sour relations with the federal government of Somalia, a country where India has historically maintained ties. More importantly, India is wary of precedents. As a nation that has dealt with its own internal secessionist challenges, India is historically allergic to the idea of redrawing borders. There is also the African Union factor. Many African nations fear that recognizing Somaliland would trigger a domino effect of separatism across the continent. India does not want to be seen as a disruptor of the African-led order. It prefers to move with a pack. This is why India waits. It watches how the Arab League reacts to Israel's move. It measures the fallout in the UN Security Council. India is waiting for the threshold of inevitability, the moment where the world admits that Somaliland is a country in everything but name. If India were to pivot, the geopolitics of the Horn would enter a new era. Recognition from a leader of the global South like India would provide Somaliland with a level of legitimacy that Western or Israeli recognition cannot. It would signal to the world that Somaliland is not a Western project, but a pragmatic reality. Investment would flood in, no longer deterred by sovereign risk insurance premiums. Maritime cooperation would move from informal anti-piracy drills to formal naval basing agreements. But even without the formal piece of paper, the fundamental reality has shifted. Somaliland is no longer a footnote in the story of Somalia. It is now a primary actor in the story of the Indian Ocean. The real story isn't whether India recognizes Somaliland tomorrow or the day after. The story is that the Great Silence has ended. Once a territory enters the permanent strategic calculations of a global power like India, its status can never truly return to the shadows. Debate has replaced neglect. Options have replaced indifference. In the high-stakes game of the Red Sea, Somaliland has finally crossed the line, and India is watching.